So, when we're talking about crystal palaces, and let's get our first information banner up here. The first crystal palace we're going to look at is the quintessential crystal palace or the baseline crystal palace in London. The wondrous crystal palace that was constructed originally in Hyde Park in 1851. It was subsequently moved and then it burned down in 1936. Now, why was this crystal palace constructed, you might ask? Hey, Larry, good to see you. Hey, Kairos, thanks for joining us. The Crystal Palace was originally constructed as the main and only building for the Great Exhibition of 1851. So they wanted to construct a building where they were going to hold this exhibition, and the whole point of the exhibition was to showcase the incredible wonders and achievements of the Industrial Revolution, at least the first couple phases of it, because you might recall that historians decided to change how many phases there were. There was another phase after the U.S. Civil War. Hey, Lisa, good to see you. Thanks for joining us from Wisconsin. And in any event, it showcases a combination of construction styles. So supposedly it's ironwork with glass. That's what they tell us it was. Yes, iron and glass is flammable, like everything else. Even though it didn't burn in the 1800s, it's probably about the only surprise about this so far. So you get a couple different looks. Hey, Rebecca, thanks for joining us. Hey, Warrior. Yes, good question there, Jamie. Who was the glassworks that actually manufactured these panes? Well, give me 1 second. I will pull it up because it's quite an interesting little story about it. But it was the Chance Brothers, and the Chance Brothers were another one of those random companies that just developed in the 19th century or the 1800s, originally founded by Robert Lucas Chance, and then it was not a very successful company because, surprise, surprise, there apparently wasn't a demand for glass initially. But then his brother came in and bailed him out, James Chance, and provided the money, which everybody seemed to have a lot of in the 1800s, and they were the ones who supposedly manufactured all the glass for the Crystal House. So, what are your thoughts on that? Yeah. Well, and when you do the analysis in terms of how much glass they had to produce and how quickly, it doesn't really make any sense. I mean, a glass company being founded and then funded in the 1800s is rather problematic because where was the demand? Well, they try to tell us that we had some buildings we were building. There were also all these people that were building their observatories. Yeah, Jamie, exactly. There were also all these people who were building their observatories. You might recall from the exploration of the Carrington event, everybody was an amateur astronomer in the 1800s, and so they had business with producing glass. And then they tell us they produced the glass for this Crystal Palace in London, and then it was only there until 1851. They didn't have a plan beyond that, so then they moved it. So I thought we'd go through and take a look initially at this interesting palace. All right, Lisa. Oh, yeah, well, there's plenty of places. Maybe go take a look at that observatory for us. But in any event, what are the chances? Broken glass fallacy. I knew there'd be some good comments on this. I want to make sure I get them highlighted. Yes, they probably had something to hide there. There's no doubt about it. Of course I am Kairos. I mean, just call it the 1800s logistical cheat code. You can do anything. You've got endless labor and endless logistics. Materials can be found anywhere and everywhere. People will start businesses even though there's no demand for the material that they're producing, and they'll be successful, and money is everywhere to be found. We just needed to be alive during the 1800s, and any one of us could start a business and be successful. Then they also charge your taxes by the number of windows. Yeah, wouldn't that be something, Kathy? The observatory in Lake Geneva, Yerkes Observatory. It's down there, and it's got the telescope Chicken's Fair. So by all means, if you can get on site there, that would be wonderful. I'd definitely like to go back to that. Oh, I've always got something funny to say about it. So let's take a look at some more images of the lovely Crystal Palace in London. We do actually have some plans, if you can call them that, although these aren't the final plans. They've also got some sketches of them, which are sketchy. If you'll excuse the pun, but I can't help myself. Now, the interesting thing in some of the images is that you'll see there's a little bit more of a baseline behind some of it. Now, the park allegedly remains, but the main structure itself burned down in 1936. And some of the pictures aren't exactly the best because they're from the 1800s. Of course, we don't really have a picture of Lucas Chance, but, he was just a glassmaker who'd want to see a picture of him. And I'm speaking in all sarcasm, but Also had these towers around it, and they say these were water towers. At least that's what we're told. So some beautiful images with it. Now this is a better image, and here you can actually see both water towers. So what are your thoughts looking at this image? And isn't this a good picture? Not sure I have an exact date on this one. Some of them I have 1860s, others I have 1870s, and there's conflicting accounts on when the pictures are from. But this is a little bit better one. But what are your thoughts with these towers, this giant crystal palace? And by the way, the area of this crystal palace, let me get this displayed here real quick because I went through the trouble of punching up this information for y'all so you can get an idea. So they called it the Great Exhibition Building. Very long and an interior height of 128 feet. And it was 3 times the interior space of St. Paul's at that time, the great cathedral in London. Yeah, mooring towers, no doubt about it. Indeed. Well, and not just that chassis, but how do you make so much of it in such a short amount of time? Because they supposedly built this in a very short amount of time. And when you do the analysis on how many panes of glass these guys had to produce, it's rather off the charts. So, well, of course, you don't need storage tanks, and we always say they're water towers. There, Brother Adam. So, what do you expect? Ah, they needed the water towers for whatever they grew inside the glass. Yeah, that's what we'd be told, but recall that they tell us it was originally for just showcasing exhibition items, but that's problematic as well. It's a good question. We'll never know because it burned down, much like the other original Crystal Palaces, although we do have one bona fide Crystal Palace that did survive. So, yeah, exactly. Spoken into existence. You are correct. Hey, Albie, good to see you. Hey, Battlestar Terra, good to see you. Yeah, I know. And it'd be great for an on-site exploration. No doubt about it. Well, that's what we were talking about there, Andra, is would they actually have the capability to produce that amount of glass? That's questionable because they'd never done it before. But, it's the 1800s, and so that's why we were joking about the logistics and the ability to do it. So, in any event, yes. So they just called it the Great Exhibition Building, and 3 times the interior space is St. Paul's, and very impressive structure. Yeah, exactly. Well, the underground bit, and then apparently the train station. I do have an image of that, or should I say the subway station, or whatever you want to call it. So, I always get my American and English terms intermixed. I can't imagine why I do that. So, just bear with me. Anyways, so going on and looking at some more images. So here's a pretty good picture that actually shows you how the exhibition hall looked or may have looked, and you can see you have all kinds of space. I don't know if we have an individual there or not, but you can definitely believe that it's easily 3 times the interior space of St. Paul's, but some of the ironwork supposedly. And the question I might ask all of you is, do you think this was originally crystal or was this some other material? And maybe the other question is, was this an old world building? Was this a contemporary era building? Or was this something in between? And what are your thoughts on all that? Yeah, just 2,800 degrees. Good call out there, Julia. Piece of cake. So obviously we can easily believe that iron just burning in the fire, right? Just don't ask any questions. Well, officially it hasn't changed that much, B. Hendricks. Officially, but again, go off of that as you will. And again, I always wonder if it's a different material than glass because they called it crystal. And there's a little bit of an inconsistency with that as we go forward. Hey, Jacob, good to see you. Yeah, I agree. It does give that hangar vibe, doesn't it? We just need a lot of books to throw in there too, don't we? Get your books and fill out the crystal hall, and you've got everything you need. Yeah, that's the way I'm leaning, Battlestar. I'm not wondering, though, if it was something that they had the remnants of, and then they reconstructed a little bit, or maybe it was relatively intact. I mean, we don't know what happened where. We can make the supposition that in the United Kingdom or Great Britain at that time, there were certain locations that did survive. You remember our exploration last week when we looked at Newcastle upon Tyne, and we saw how intact a lot of areas in Newcastle were, or still are to this day, I should say. Airship hangars used glass heating. Oh, that's a good call out there, Larry. Good observation, too. World's Fair stuff. Yeah, exactly, Peter. And it keeps coming up. And all these crystal palaces that we're looking at were affiliated with World's Fairs or exhibitions. Although they didn't call this one a World's Fair, it was the Great Exhibition, or so they said. Now, these were some of the plans that were submitted, and I'm just venting here a little bit. I think if I had $1 for every time everybody tells me, well, that's just what architects do. They just design plans all the time, and that's all they do. I guess they're never on site making sure that these miracles happen, even though we have conflicting accounts on that. But supposedly, this was one of the original proposals for the Great Industrial Exhibition. You notice it's got a dome on it. Now, of course, they didn't go with the dome. And then we've got a little bit more on the plan down here. And of course, remember, this is on the layout at Hyde Park. This isn't in its subsequent location. The move is pretty funny, too, when we look at that. And this is after it's moved to Sydenham Hill. I think I'm pronouncing that properly. Many different pronunciations go through my head, but isn't this an interesting perspective of it? Because you can kind of see it a little bit here, but then it must be closer to the tower. You can't see the tower from this perspective, but isn't the tower interesting? Because we don't often think of the towers, but they're rather unique architecture themselves. So I know this image that we're looking at now doesn't get seen very often. Yeah, no doubt. World Science Fairs. No, it doesn't seem possible. Not now, and certainly not then. I'm with you on that one, Risha, but that's what they tell us they did. It's all good, Robert. Good to see you. Well, good to see you, Alan. Thanks for joining us. I'm with you, Cecilia. I mean, I think that the fact that they even call it crystal, I mean, maybe that's even a hint. Is it some kind of crystal? Because you might recall in one of the very early explorations, or perhaps you haven't seen it, we looked at the crystal empire, or the concept of using crystal as an energy source. So, well, we've got some images. We'll take a look at that, Andrew, although make of it what you will, as I always like to say, because, they're just images. They don't have the final proof on anything. It's just clues. Well, they still try to run the whole exhibition thing, KC933. So is it really a World's Fair, or is it just it's an exhibition where we're showcasing technology? They seem to have blurred a little bit, much like with the change that we observed in the 1930s. That's how World's Fairs changed. So, yeah, good call out there, Westman. Yeah, what could be going on in the background? I'm not sure. Well, thanks for joining us, Panda. Hey, that's a good one, I am Kairos. Yeah, just get Scotty to work on the computer and he'll punch up the transparent aluminum formula with Mr. Nichols. Yes, I remember that scene very well. Here's a nice little frontal shot of it where you can kind of see the quote-unquote glass, although is that really what we're looking at? I mean, it's hard to tell. We've got old black and white photos. They could really say or mean anything. Here, I'll move the banner so you can see it. I guess you can see it just fine. I understand. Oh, you know it, Laura. And I'll bet you if it was still standing, it would be a perfect wedding venue, wouldn't it? Minbar was Crystal Cities. That's true. I forgot about that. The Minbari in Babylon 5, another overlap. Lead crystal melts at a mere 621 degrees Fahrenheit, much lower than other glass. And is that really what they made it out of? I guess that's just what we don't know, because we can only look at these old images. But you can get an idea that there was more to these when you see some of the block work with some of the supporting structure. It gives you the hint there was a little bit more going on than what we're told. Now, I just showed this. This is one of the original telegraph machines. I just thought this was fascinating because this is supposedly one of the exhibits that they were featuring there, because you may recall the telegraph was very new. And in fact, the Carrington event that would come in 1859, a good 8 years after they built this beauty, featured disrupted telegraph machines. So make of that what you will. And here's one of our images of its unfortunate burning in 1936. Now, your guess is as good as mine as to why this thing burned down or what was really going on. But what's intriguing about this photo, well, one, their firefighting capabilities, but it was 1936. Coincidentally, the same year that H.G. Wells' Things to Come would come out, his response to the film Metropolis from 1927. But I guess Things to Come was not going to include a Crystal Palace, at least not in London. But you can get an idea that the tower is a little different. It's a rather problematic image with the fire that we have, and who was just sitting around there with a camera to snap it in 1936. Yeah, iron and glass. Well, lead glass maybe. So, yeah, another cow story. So, yeah, that's a good point there, Sean. Nothing else did ever burn down, did it? And that's the impression they give us. No doubt about it. Well, and is it that? Is it something they were experimenting with, or was it just the remnants of it, Albie? I mean, that's what we don't know. I mean, for all we know, it could have just been their version of a very elaborate and majestic greenhouse. Every structure didn't have to be built up to extremes. But why do we have this interesting moving story? It's as if the fire story is not interesting enough. So, yes, indeed. Oh, yes, that's always a good example. And any other wildfire that we see, not just that one, what's really behind them. Oddly enough, California doesn't seem to be having difficulties with wildfires. Now it's Canada, another sea name, but different location. So make of it what you will. Now here's the real interesting image. Now this is a early type of photo, although what it is exactly, I mean, they tell us what it is, but I question it. They show the tree that was inside here. So what came first, the tree or the palace? Did they build the palace around the tree? Or did they move the palace over the tree? Or was the palace already there and they planted the tree? What are your thoughts? There's another better image of it, but this is one of the early images of it. So this is another one of those things that causes us to ask questions. Indeed. And boy, you'll get quite a doozy with that one, Jamie. No doubt about it. Weird science, You know what? You might be onto something there, F, in the chat. That does seem like a 3D image from one of those 3D films. I'm thinking Space Hunter with Molly Ringwald. Anybody see that one? Early 80s film when they tried to bring back 3D. Way before James Cameron did it with Avatar. Oh, yeah. Just as it could have been a healing center. Yeah, that's true. That's very true, Chassie, and a very good point. Good to see you, Aether Topologist. Thanks for joining us. Yeah, I'm thinking the same thing, Kathy. Palace was there first, and then bam, they had the tree. Now, was it the same palace? Did they move it? I'm not so keen on the whole movement story. Let's go on to the next one. And they've got several sketches of it, and this seems to be the main drawing or rendering that they show of it. But it's interesting how the sketches that they did don't tend to match the pictures that we have in either location. But you could say, well, the artist was just taking a creative license. Fine. And then a little bit of a painting of some of the exhibits on the inside. Now, we do have a few pictures of some of the exhibits. Looks like we got our favorite cannons down here. Maybe they brought some Dahlgrens from the United States Navy. Everybody's got their top hats. But again, just a painted picture, but still a very compelling picture. Because, was this based on something real? What exactly are they showcasing here? Well, of course, the wonders of the Industrial Revolution. Things that we tend to associate with tall spires. But like I said, it's a drawing, so does it prove anything? No. But does it give us hints? Yes. Now, this is interesting because when you look at this plan, it's clear that this was filled out a little bit later, but it almost gives you the idea that this was based on the plan in terms of where they were setting up all the exhibits, because naturally you don't have any aspect concerning the height. Who needs to know the height of the building? So they say plan, but really I think they mean layout in terms of where everything was. Like you've got Switzerland here. So this reminds us of some of the stuff that we looked at when we explored the expositions or the World's Fairs in general. So yeah, I suppose it matches that, but to be fair, anybody could produce a diagram like this and then just write things on it. Just write country names here. And that's about all you've got. Here's the Austria room. Here's the France room. Yeah. The Jersey room. Interesting. So maybe they're not counting on anybody to pay attention. And here's another image that shows it after it burned down. Now, they still had the one water tower that survived. The other one was damaged and they pulled it down. They said that they detonated this water tower during World War II because they were concerned that the Luftwaffe, the German Air Force, was using it to guide in on London. Although then they subsequently said that the Luftwaffe was using the Thames, the river. So make of it what you will again. But here you can see a little bit of the infrastructure down here, the entryway and parts of the park that remain. But isn't the rubble very interesting? I mean, what exactly is going on here? Have we seen this before somewhere? Yeah, it's a good way to put it. I don't know. But they did talk about financial problems, Miss Mewit. They did talk about lots of financial problems because of the move, ironically enough. Yeah, I think that goes without saying, but there's a lot of people who will go hell to high water to defend those historical accounts. And I'm not just talking about the random people who comment on videos. I encountered quite a few of them in the university and other institutions. So, ah, funny you bring that up because the actual architect who we'll look at in a little bit was all about the real banana trees. So, yes, yes, yes. In any event, let me pull up the information here on moving it. We'll go to the next image. So yeah, another image of the fire real quick. Almost looks like it's lit up from the inside. It's hard to say what's really going on there. And so the move. So they moved it from Hyde Park to Sydenham Hill, and it cost them 8 times as much to move it as to build it. At least that's what they tell us. What do you think on that one? Yeah, that's a very good point. Keep people confused and they defer to authority. It works wonders. Oh, funny you bring that up, Sean. Yes. A lot of things disappear during that time frame, Lisa, and then they disappear again in the 1960s with the so-called urban renewal. Well, and you're mentioning that generation from 1902 to 1940, and I'm not denigrating anybody, but you might notice that a lot of times that generation has a reputation for being stoic, and then they even call it the silent generation, and then the greatest generation. But what you tend to get is when you ask people about things about what really happened, well, they tend to say, we just don't talk about that. For example, I remember asking my grandfather about my great grandfather, and the answer I got was, we just don't talk about that. Okay. And you might recall the orphan train story last year. That's the story I'm talking about. I was trying to get more details about that. Of course, this was years ago. This was before I was into this kind of research. Ah, gotcha, Nora. No, I suppose it didn't, did it? And I think a lot of people whose families were from that generation had the same thing. They just didn't talk about stuff, and you get that feeling of that the fear that was involved with it. Hey, elusive truths, thanks for joining us. Oh yeah, no doubt about it. Frequencies of light and sound, beyond any shadow of a doubt, and it's a very recurring theme as well. But I mean, and the whole story of the move behind it's rather crazy because they said it was only going to be up for 1851. They had to move it, but where exactly we're going to move it to, and then they went against the wishes of the parliament. It's always the same thing. Yeah, of course. Well, putting it on horse and buggy. I'm trying to remember. I think it's about 8 miles straight line distance from Hyde Park to Sydenham Hill. I might be off on that. It's been a while, but it's not that far over distance, but it's far enough. I mean, you have to disassemble the whole thing, move the pieces. We'll just say 10 miles, and then you got to reassemble it. So yeah, and apparently it faced financial troubles, and that's why it supposedly eroded and nobody paid attention to it. They just saw it as another one of the follies, as they call old world structures over there. So yeah, fully agree with that one. So we'll move on here. There's a better picture of that tree. Let me make sure you still have that one up because my images are doing funny things. But this is a better picture of the tree that we believe came before the building. Or should I say the building came before the tree? A little bit better of an image of it. And look at the floor as well. What exactly is the floor made out of? Is that bricks? Is that some other structure? Did they move all that as well? And when you look closer at the supposed ironwork, again, it gives you the impression of something possibly a little bit more. Now, it could be ironwork, sure, but looking at it in these images, once again, you get the hint maybe it was something more. So, what do we think? 2 different buildings in 2 different locations, and the moving story was just another means to burn up cash? Thank you, Crypto Alchemist. I appreciate that. Oh yeah, a lot of glass, like the Mall of America. And what's funny is the original Metropolitan Stadium, which was on the site of Mall of America down there in Burnsville, south of Minneapolis. That's an interesting story in and of itself. Back when the Minnesota Vikings played good football. Not saying they don't now. I just had to throw in one professional joke, or one professional sports joke. Yep. It does seem like it's two different buildings, and that's always the story. Hey, Sky Sage, good to see ya. Hey, Sissy, no problem. You're here now. And I'll just go ahead and, as you're all coming in, be sure you hit that like button, support the channel. I greatly appreciate it. And we're looking at the tree that it seems to have come after whenever this actual Crystal Palace was constructed. So, yes, indeed. And we are looking at the Crystal Palace in London, built 1851, moved, and then burned down in 1936. Ah. I do wonder that too, Battlestar. I do wonder that too. That's a good point. Yeah, that's right, Robert. That's kind of the way I see it now. Is it kayfabe or not? I just don't know. What kind of tree is that? I do wonder. Let's look a little closer. Wonder if it's another one of those trees that we just can't get any more of. Is that a classic English oak? Not an American chestnut. Of course, they would have their day not too long after this. But very interesting surrounding infrastructure with this, too. Looks like we got a little fountain here. How big is the fountain? I'm not sure, but it's got to be a pretty big tree to fill up most of the exhibition hall. Now, this is the plan of the palace and the park, and of course, whenever we have parks involved, that's interesting. Oh, look at that. I think I see symbols of the glaive from Kroll. No, I'm just seeing things. Quite a layout, though, on this park. And we can still explore the park. So the palace itself. But definitely odd with the diagram. And what's really going on with the supporting infrastructure here. What was the original purpose of these structures? Always good questions to consider. Yeah. The brick floor. Yeah, what kind of brick was it, KC933? I think so, Lisa. I could definitely go along with that. It did look like an elm, didn't it? Hey, RB, thanks for joining us. Oh, yeah, the Opryland Hotel. Yeah, almost, you get that. That's a good comment there. That feeling of the amalgamation of the artificial with the natural. And that seems to be another thing we observe with the old world buildings. No doubt about it. Yeah, beautiful and symmetric. The whole layout. Good point there, Sky Sage. Here's another image of after everything was burned down. And then here we have some brick structures. So this is interesting. But you look a little bit more closely in this image, and again, you get the hint of something a little bit more than just ironwork. So not really sure what to make of it. And you can see the tower back here. But again, another image that has some, shall we say, fading problems. We typically call it vanilla sky, but I'll just say fading problems because, where's the bottom of the tower? Oh, it's still smoky. It's debris. Okay, fine, whatever. 1936, so you think we'd have a little bit better photography, but no, maybe not. You can still see the general shape, but what, did all the glass just burn out on it? Is the glass still in there? What happened? Was this after they were starting to demolish it? Hard to say. There you go. And another consistency problem. Fading problems. Good one. Hey, Vaughn, good to see you. Oh, yeah. Right there in front right. It's like he's wearing his little hat there. Hard to say what's going on with that. And so you can see the comparison. And this is an interesting image because here you can see some of the fountains, the park, the way it's integrated with the structure itself. So at least, this image gives you the impression, yes, the structure actually existed. Obviously, we're not big on the modesty statues, were we? The alarm just went off, so look out. The X-rated alarm. But what do you think when you see these fountains and the way this is integrated with the palace itself? Yeah, I agree. Like it was vaporized. I could probably say that to somebody, and if I put it in a book and documented, they might actually believe it. Yeah, it does give that impression, doesn't it, Jacob? Church bells. Yeah, that's a good one, too. This is probably one of my favorite overall images of it because this really gives you an idea of the size and the complexity and the geometric precision of how well it's laid out. Seeing the two water towers. Okay, yeah, sure, they're water towers. Whatever you say. But then you can also see the tight geometry of how it was laid out, but not just the overview, but also from top to bottom. Something that for some unknown reason the plans don't ever seem to capture, do they? But when you look at a full image of it, you do get the idea. And some of these other structures are pretty impressive too. And we'll get to the individual who supposedly architected this shortly. But I just wanted to take some time to view this image. And as usual, all images will be posted in the usual spot on the channel Reddit once we're done. Yes, it does give that look, doesn't it? Why does that come up all the time? Good point there, Ryan. Probably in the same place they always are. You know, photo technology was behind when we were flying planes, so, you know, they just weren't there. So what we were looking at earlier, RB, I mean, I think it's something more advanced, something that wasn't just glass. And that's why they couldn't leave it standing, because if this were still standing to this day and we could visit it, we could probably determine, this is some sort of material that's a little bit stronger, a lot better than glass. As I am Kyra said earlier, transparent aluminum from Star Trek. Star Trek 4, of course, because that's where it was mentioned. You know, that's where somebody had the creativity to write it and not endlessly reference it. But I'm not going to go down that road. That would be for starters, Cecilia. We need to verify what happened then, and then we can start to look to go back earlier. So good point. Oh, yeah. Very good point there, Robert. Great observation. Classic portal that we tend to see with churches and the church windows, the giant portal windows. Great observation there. And another image after it was reduced to rubble by whatever forces caused it. Fire, sure, okay, whatever. At least we can see the tower a little bit better, but of course, it's obvious that the tower is not crystal. But what exactly is this tower made out of? And maybe that was something else. They couldn't have people going to assess or analyze what those towers looked like. Yeah, it is, isn't it? And it's always worth a study and a close look, Elusive Truths, the stained glass. Never a dull moment there. Yep, we're still live, Frank. Thanks for joining us. Yeah, that would be my first thought, Robert. Blimp Tower, mooring post. Conflicting accounts, KC933. Conflicting accounts. Nope, you caught us. You're on. Wouldn't it be nice to get some legitimate transparent aluminum? Yeah, and there's really no problems with those videos, just like there's no problem with the videos of the construction of the Hoover Dam. You know, if you all want to watch a funny movie that makes you really question things, go back and watch 1952's Invasion USA. Supposedly a Cold War scare flick, but you'll actually see a lot of examples of infrastructure and then references to it that just are really strange. Wasn't it impressive? I guess not. At least not consistently. Yeah, that's very, very true, our melted reality. But isn't it interesting what they try to pass off as a water tower? I always think of those 3 water towers in St. Louis for whatever reason. Yeah, you're probably right. Now, isn't this interesting? One of the images of the display, supposedly we were very obsessed with Egypt. Because what the heck did Egypt have to do with the Industrial Revolution? Well, everything. So what are your thoughts on this? Look at these figures here. Supposedly a real image and supposedly from the Crystal Palace. Can't verify it. It's burned down. I can't actually go there and tell you, but this is what the image shows. Yeah. My thoughts exactly, RB. What? Oh, don't worry, Nora. We're getting to Joseph. I'm not bypassing him. There's too many good things to say about old Joseph, the architect. He's quite an individual. Yeah, they sure do, Anime Sport. Those are some of my favorite standpipe water towers to look at, as they call them in St. Louis. They also had them in other locations, New York City, off of in Madison, Wisconsin. They had one that they've torn down. So ceremonial status for witchcraft, yeah. Yeah, they sure are, especially fitting in the Crystal Palace like that. Do they? They seem to. Or is that the impression that we're given? You know, just like all roads lead to Rome and then Rome leads to Egypt. That seems to be the message that we're given. But why is that? It's a very good point. They were catering to all the tourists from Egypt who were coming to see the Great Exhibition in 1851. I believe they'll tell us this was a subsequent image from another event, but hard to say what's really going on here. And again, you get that impression of the giant portal window. And here's another image just showing the layout. And here you can get its sort of, how shall we say, greenhouse function. And I wonder how effective these were as greenhouses. It would have made an incredible greenhouse, no doubt about it. Got the fountain back there. No shortage of them. Or you could just build at any scale. Good question, RB. Better pull out our map and take a look. I'm not going to guess Thule, though. Yeah. Who knows, Sean? Who knows? Or what we think of as Egyptians, or what we're told. Hard to say. Yeah, I'm not gonna run with that one, Robert. But it's a great comment. Well, yes, originally was trying to look at some of the baseline civilizations. Somewhat problematic, but all right, moving on. Now, this is interesting because this was a subsequent exposition, and here we're told that this is supposedly a replica of the Parliament building from Canada. Yes, they decided to build a replica of the Parliament building from Canada in front of the Crystal Palace, because it all makes perfect sense, doesn't it? Some of these images you really just have to do a double take on. I mean, it looks pretty legitimate, pretty well sized. It doesn't look like it's some sort of facade. It's made entirely out of stucco and balsa wood and popsicle sticks and these triangular windows. And it was all done in 3 days. I don't know. I'm just looking at this image. It's another baffling image with this Crystal Palace. I had a feeling you'd have a good statement on it there, Jamie. Yes, it does look like the Addams Family home. Or Maniac Mansion, if anybody ever remembers that one. Toothpicks. Yeah, that's what the columns were, right, Casey? On the inside, they had columns of toothpicks. Yeah, you weren't saying a thing, Dave. You're absolutely right, because you know what happened if you said something. Oh, you're questioning the building? Yeah, we've got a little evaluation for you. Your brother told us that you were acting a little strange, so if you're in Iowa, you're going to Mount Pleasant. Or maybe Cherokee. We got a nice one there, too. They are. It's just a question of how do they fit in, what came first. That's where we have a lot of trouble trying to ascertain what did come first. But yes, you do see the Sphinx and the pyramids, and that's why one of the reasons I suspect that the earlier foundation eras are where the Sphinx and the pyramids came from. Maybe even right after the, dare I say, first era. But we can't talk about the first era, so we'll say the second era. But yeah, one of the foundation eras, no doubt about it. There's a reason why there's this constant reverence for pyramids and the Sphinx, and it's seen everywhere. And boy, do they go to some lengths to try to stop you from seeing it. Oh, yeah, I forgot about that one, Rebecca. Yes, Christina Ricci. I remember when she was in everything. Oh, another one. You can never get enough of those. Okay, moving on. This was supposedly the sketch that was drawn of it. I just drew a sketch on a napkin. Yeah, they try to sell that one too. Now, isn't this interesting? What do we have here? Another little festival that went on. I think this was from the 1880s. And they just happened to park a very large organ in the middle of it. At least I think it's an organ, but who knows? Maybe it's some other kind of device that emits sound for other functions, some other piece of technology. I mean, you could say you've got 4 giant industrial level fasces all linked together. What are your thoughts on this device? That's got to be the most amazing thing, aside from all the people that are crowded in this area. This was in the Crystal Palace, allegedly. Looks like it is. Strong likelihood that it is, yes. But what are the details behind it? That's what we were trying to figure out earlier. No, he definitely knew something. There's no doubt about that. I think when I get a little bit more research completed on that, I'm putting together some pieces on organs, Jamie. I think we're going to have to do a exploration on that. Maybe live stream, maybe a video. We'll see. At least a video, but I'm thinking it'd be better with a live stream. Yeah, it does give that stadium appearance, doesn't it? Imagine if they still had the Crystal Palace today. Then they could do the NFL in the Crystal Palace. You know they'd be all about it. Yeah, that's a good question, Calvin. Let's take a look. Hard to say. Hard to say in this image. You know, are these real people or is this just backdropped in? I'd say they're real and you're just lacking the detail in the image, but I could be wrong. And they're pulling a Major League Baseball United States 2020 to 2021 because you don't need fans and stands. You can just pipe in sounds and it's the same thing. Sorry, I had to go there. Yeah, just many interesting images that don't make a lot of sense with this one. Wouldn't it be fun, Adam? And imagine what you could do with an organ of this size. Yeah, where's Waldo? So it would seem. Really couldn't tell you. Yeah, it might be, for all we know. Who knows what capabilities this had if this is real technology. Oh, the schematics on the New Yorker Hotel. I would, but I've run into some trouble with trying to talk about that individual schematics. I'll have to give it another whirl. I don't give up. It's just sometimes it seems like there's opposition to doing things, and then other times there's not. Depends on the timing. Maybe all three, Jamie. I mean, if you think about it, we think of the concept of cymatics as the quote-unquote jackknife of all technology. What couldn't it do might be the better question. Oh, good comment there, Vaughn. That's true. That's why they always had bells in all the old churches. That's what they say. I had a feeling you were going to say that, Sky Sage. Just had a feeling. Oh, and I also love the fact they have this giant telescope in it. So we just didn't have a giant telescope in the Chicago World's Fair in 1893, good 40 years later. They had this one in 1851. How exactly are you adjusting that? Granted, it's just a drawing. But remember, everybody was into astronomy as an avocation, or during the transition from astrology to astronomy. It was an avocation. Remember that. Now, isn't this interesting? Showcasing one of the first naval guns. And naval gun technology is real. I mean, really, this is the predecessor to all modern guns, modern artillery, what you'd see in World War I, World War II, and still predominantly used to this day. Nope, sorry, United States Army, you never got your Crusader, no matter how much the artillery officers were gushing over it. No mercy missions for you. But you can get an idea of the layout of the palace on the inside and then realizing just how large this gun is. And remember, they had these guns on the naval ships. Now, did they build this or did they find this? Hey, Sooner West, good to see you. You just happen to jump in as I'm waxing about naval guns. What great timing. Bells, towers, organs. Oh, yeah. And no shortage of it, too. And no shortage of scale, different sizes. Oh, yeah. Lovely windows for building artillery. That's a good one, Jay. Yeah, I'm glad you're enjoying it. Yeah, I'm doing this one a little different, but it seems to be going just fine. So, iron production and tool making doesn't... Yeah, exactly. And you don't have the ability to mass produce this and consider the colossal size of a lot of these things. And yet there is a connection with this time frame and these structures. So what to say about it? Not really sure. Yeah.
Polar regions. The forbidden area.
What do you know of conspiracy? It's the charming thing about them, isn't it? When a machination is real, no one knows about it.
So, can everybody see this image so far? Yeah, you're right, Adam. It really does go to outer space in a way. Anyways, so we are looking at the USS Leyte Gulf, an Essex-class aircraft carrier from 1947. The Leyte Gulf was the... Oh, wait, I'm sorry. I'm completely off. Philippine Sea, wrong Essex-class carrier. The USS Philippine Sea. Excuse me. See, I make mistakes too. And this is a picture of it in the Panama Canal. And you might notice that it has some very, very large planes on the entire flight deck. Now, a couple oddities here. So this is 1947, and official history tells us this is when the United States was in its period of disarming after World War II, or reductions. Demobilizing the great military machine that the United States had built. But yet the United States managed to build 24 Essex-class aircraft carriers. These were fleet carriers. These were not the escort carriers. These were the full tonnage fleet carriers. And they committed one of these to Operation High Jump. Very odd. And you might look at these planes, and these were the largest cargo planes that they had at the time. Same class of plane that had flown over the hump when they when they flew over the Himalayas as part of that supply operation during World War II. Now, strangely enough, you can find plenty of maps from the 1800s that show the flat concept. Oddly enough, for people who knew that the land was round, or spherical, whatever you want to call it, but you can find no shortage of maps from the 1800s. Well, they'll just say it's because of the Flat Earther Society. It's just odd to me. But you go beyond it, and you'll find all sorts of different connections behind what's really going on. Now, this is really peculiar. So this is stated to be flying over the hump. But this image that we're looking at is attributed, oddly enough, to the library from Operation High Jump. Now here's where things get a little screwy. Is this actually an image from Operation High Jump in the Antarctica, or is this one of the planes flying over the Himalayas? It's very odd because it's the exact same type of planes that they used for both operations. And why would they need these kind of planes? Because flying over the hump, the official hump was the Himalayas, it was very difficult. It was very difficult for the 10th Air Force that carried out the mission. The intention behind the mission was to supply the Chinese army and Chiang Kai-shek. And we saw, well, that worked out for the United States, didn't we? But anyway, they flew this mission and supplied them as they were fighting the Japanese. It was very difficult to make the flight. But we have this image that's attributed to Operation High Jump. Where on Earth in the Antarctic would you find mountains that are anywhere close as high as the Himalayas? Or the elevations anywhere as close as the same? Yet you have this image. And I recall being down there, and you do actually see mountains that look very, very tall. Now, could it be a visual effect? Could it all just be a mistake? Sure. But it is odd. It's another one of those strange anomalies. Yeah, I mean, we really don't know. Did they actually have to fly over something? Well, and that's another good point, RB. I mean, what are they? Are they giant mountains? Are they giant something else? Is it an ice wall? Is it some other complete form of physical existence we don't even understand? So again, you get more questions than answers. Now, oddly enough, if you're actually looking to understand how the realms may exist, I'm using this rather bizarre picture. Is it all a simulation? Is it overlapping realities? Are there overlapping planes of existence? Is there something even beyond our physical understanding that we could never display on a map? Is that why we have lands that constantly shift? Is that why we have lands in the North Pole that are no longer there or no longer shown? Did they disappear? Is that why we just find islands off Japan? even with all of our great modern technology? Or is it all just a mistake? I don't know. But oddly enough, I just wanted to show you this map because this actually shows you the airlift that they did to get into China from the northwest side of Burma, and how they had to fly over the Himalayas at that time. Same kind of planes. Okay, the moment you've all been waiting for. Has anybody heard of Terra Infinita? And I'm sure you all have, because we have covered it before. Ah, yes, okay. I had a feeling you did. Anyway, concept drawn a couple years back, very, very creative, although it is actually based on earlier maps. Now, here's the thing. Before you get wrapped around the bend that, yes, this is confirming that this is all flat, we really don't know. We don't know what it is. But what I appreciate about it is an attempt to depict other lands, the lands beyond. The lands that we know, the 7 continents. By the way, I noticed earlier in the comments you were talking about the 7 golden cities. There is another theory I haven't gotten to yet that talks about each of the golden cities, one being in each continent. Isn't that an intriguing concept? Hey, look at this. Ocean of the Tartars. Ooh, cool. The Ancestral Republic. Germania. That's an older one. The Norse Ocean. Atlantis. So again, giving you an idea, and now I'm not showing this entire map. You know, if you are familiar with the Nos Confuden maps, or if you're familiar with Terra Infinita, you know that there's a heck of a lot more to this. I'm just showing a little blow-up of it. Namely, out of respect to the person that actually created this back in 2022. But very creative. Very interesting way to actually look at all the lands. Wouldn't you say? Ah, look at that, Vaughn. Yes. 7 kings, 7 cities, 7 continents. Ah, ha, ha. Ooh, KC933. It's way too much to comprehend. It may well be. It may well be. But isn't it funny how, and I'll use that word very directly, isn't it funny how each of our belief systems all revolve around that? That there's so much to existence that we can't possibly begin to comprehend it. Because if you go off of, we're on a planet, we're flying through space, well, we're in this universe, and it's so tremendously large you can't begin to comprehend it. Or if you think it's flat, we're in this infinite flat plane. It's so large you can't begin to comprehend it. Or if it's an entirely different existence, a tesseract, 4-dimensional, overlapping realities, you again can't begin to comprehend it. Problem, problem, problem. Now, this is an earlier depiction of the world beyond the ice wall. And no doubt this inspired the recent works that we just looked at. But as I recall, I remember seeing this probably about 10, 12 years ago. I did actually use this as a depiction because of some of the lands that were depicted beyond. Now, some people think that what the Antarctica represents is an ice wall. Maybe so. And that beyond those lands are other lands, other continents. And you have these gates here. The Serpent's Gate, the Tiger's Gate, the Sentinel's Gate. Now, there are other ways to interpret this. Oh, at least I forget the Leviathan's Gate. How fitting. But there are other ways you can interpret this. Maybe it's not necessarily all a flat plane. Maybe these gates represent something else. Maybe there's different physical locations that you could access them. Maybe they're the actual portals we've been talking about or looking through. And that's how you access these other lands. And what's even more interesting, if you go back to the Terra Infinita example, is they've got other lands that are actually named after what we think of as the planets, like the land of Mars, the land of Jupiter. Very interesting, isn't it? Huh, Shangri-La. There it is. Hey, look, we found Shangri-La. But going back to this earlier concept, you look and you understand that there are multiple ways to see it. It doesn't have to be all flat. It doesn't have to be all spherical. Or maybe the reality is it's round. I'm still amazed at how many people back in the day thought that orbis meant spherical. No, it means circular. And isn't it interesting how on the Mercator and the Urbano Monte maps we looked at, things were drawn in circles? What a coincidence, wouldn't you say? Hey, thanks, Sooner West. I appreciate that. And welcome to the new members. Oh, Ring World. Yeah, that's a great example. And Atom Bomb, dome-shaped. Yeah, not cube-shaped like the Borg, dome-shaped. So it gives you a whole new appreciation when you go to a planetarium. Ooh, there's a good comment. Banff Local. That layout is very reminiscent of the concentric circle symbol in Rose-Croix Scottish Rite masonry. Another coincidence, right? Oh, Castle and Pasture. Sun and moon move in circles. Sun's heat determines shape. Ah, that's possible. There's a lot of different elements to this that really transcend the mind. And so you start to understand that if you look at things different ways, if you're capable of seeing different perspectives, it becomes a little bit easier to grasp this infinite existence that we may have. Ooh, the volcanic waste. Isn't that interesting? Maybe that's like the land of Mordor. Who knows? Now I go back to the old C-47 here. So this was the same plane that they used to fly over the hump in the Himalayas, but then also the plane that they used as part of Operation High Jump. Why the heck would you need a plane like this if you're just going down to what we think of as the Antarctic continent, and there's no mountains that are anywhere close to the Himalayas? Why would you need that kind of capability? Again, why would you need an aircraft carrier? It's not an escort carrier. It's not one of those cargo ships that converted to an aircraft carrier. It was a fleet carrier. Ship of the line, a capital ship. And so does it lend to this possibility? Does it allude to this concept of these multiple overlapping forms of existence? Is it beyond just a physical limitation? And this is really where we cross that big boundary in the explorations. Yes, I try to keep things grounded, but at the same time, I always want to keep my mind and your minds open to the possibilities that there are other forms of existence. That maybe there's a little bit of element of truth in all the theories that we have, or all the forms of existence. And maybe, just maybe, there's actual truth in all the possibilities of what the shape of the land actually is. And the reason that we don't comprehend it is because we're not supposed to. Everything is kept divided. Very effectively divided at that. Vaughn, it makes sense our realm is the North Pole with 4 rivers, 4 exits. We can't go there because we're already there. Ooh, that's very interesting. Yes, and I could definitely see that too. I am Kairos. On the back of the $1 bill, are those the mountains of Antarctica behind the pyramid? Ooh, good question. What are we showing on our currency? I just don't know. It does look like that though, doesn't it? I can see why you'd see that. Maybe we'll just have to look at US currency on some exploration, huh? Ah, yes. Last bird expedition may cause dispute by 4 nations over Antarctic claims. How South Polar lands are staked out. Why on earth would anybody want to stake out a big giant ice continent in the middle of nowhere that has no strategic value? You see, we subvert this by saying, well, it's the whole flat earth, round earth, spherical earth argument. No. Why in the heck was there this international dispute over who was staking out these lands? What strategic value is there to these lands? That never made any sense. The treaty never made any sense, and not to mention this treaty was signed during the high point of the Cold War, when the United States and the Soviet Union were threatening total conflict every moment of every day. But they managed to rather quickly agree upon this. Even though in this little article you see here, may cause dispute over Antarctic claims. Yeah, because there's so many wonderful things down there, right? I mean, officially, you're nowhere close to the United States or the Soviet Union, or any of their interests at the time. You can't affect shipping lanes down there. Officially, there's no natural resources that were worthwhile to gather from there, although Admiral Byrd said otherwise. But, Admiral Byrd said all kinds of things. It doesn't mean they were true. But it's very odd, isn't it? When you look at this, well, it has a lot of strategic value. We need to defend it. Yeah, exactly, I am Kairos. How many uncontested treaties are there? It is very, very odd. We don't even have to look into all the other theories about what's going on down there. Just looking at the mainstream account and just comparing it to what's happening now, none of it adds up. None of it makes any sense. Good one, Atomic. Good one. Excuse me. I'm laughing a lot more at that one than I should. Lisa, how would they know what the land really looks like from the ocean? Did they use the moon as a projector? Oh, very good question. Who knows? Oh, getting some good comments here. St. Pally Girl, why don't any of those other lands have ice rings surrounding them, and do they have a magnetic mountain in their center? Oh, they may. Who knows? Who knows how we access them, and who knows what the nature of them really is? No, not at all. It can't be that. Don't say that. Hey, Miss Liz. Well, thank you. Thanks for joining us. Ishko, the internet is still full of idiots who think you have options if you want to travel to Antarctica. Yeah, well, and even if you do get the privilege of going down there, guess what? You're not exactly on a sightseeing tour. You're not staying at the Hilton Garden Inn, and you can't decide to go to certain sites on certain day. Let's just say it's a very controlled itinerary, and we'll leave it at that. And if you expect anything else, yeah, well, good luck. But it's always funny to me how people know so much about areas they've never been to. Now, oddly enough, I just thought I would include this because I was looking through a telescope a couple weeks ago, and I was reminded, no, I didn't look through a couple weeks ago, it was actually some time ago, looking at Jupiter. And oddly enough, looking in the sky and seeing how Jupiter and its moons were aligned. And oddly enough, I was just so... I'm just going to be honest with you all. It was strange to me that the moons were all in this very, very symmetrical line with Jupiter. So really odd things when you look through telescopes. Just a little observation. What's it have to do with all this? Well, who knows what we're looking at in the sky? Maybe that's what I'm getting at. Another little image of it. It was just strange to me. Why is it so symmetrical? I don't know. I'm so far away that the moons were just perfectly lined up? What are the odds of that? Probably the same as the odds of the Earth, the sun and the moon appearing the exact same size in the sky, right? The less you think about it, just don't think about it, just accept it, right? And then, of course, certain images when you look at the planets. And another oddity with them is just... I don't know, maybe it's just me through a telescope. I'm always struck by how two-dimensional everything looks. But, I can just attribute that to its telescope. It's the limitations of a telescope. Much like I'm presenting this to you on a screen, you're watching this on a video, it's two-dimensional. It's limited. I can't project the spherical planet Jupiter in front of you. Wish I could, but I can't do that. So, no limitations there. Now, you probably haven't seen this. This is a very interesting way of projecting the lands on a different kind of map. Now, you might remember that the Urbano Monte and even the earlier Mercator maps were considered planispheres. In other words, you had different sheets and you could lay them out. But oddly enough, this is another way of understanding how the lands all roll together. Very odd that they'd have this in this unique triangle pattern, wouldn't you say? I wonder what you get if you cut this out and you fold this all together. I mean, do you get a sphere if you do it? What do you think? Klingons near you. Okay. I'm not even going to say that. Nice try, Reality Checkmate. Yeah, KC933. Actually, 2,000 known. There's probably many more that are unknown, if you follow me. Hey, Calvin looking for obs. Yeah, we are looking down. We're always looking down, aren't we? So what's really the situation with that? I don't know. Ooh, decahedron. You get a pointy ball. Yeah, exactly. Ishko, the deception of telescopes telling you the truth about the universe reality. Yeah, it's funny you say that because I always remember the times that I looked through binoculars and I was always questioning what I was looking at then. But let's not talk about that scene from Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, all right? It was a really long filming experience. Anyways. Now, a little image here of Little America, the official camp that was set up as part of Operation High Jump, Admiral Byrd's little mission down there. And so you can kind of get an idea. Here you've got the ships that are somehow operating right on the ice, it appears. I don't know, maybe they didn't break through it. And you've got a little bit of some equipment pitched here. And then you've got some tents down here. It gives you an idea of the layout of this. But oddly enough, it doesn't look like that down there currently. So did the situation change? Was it in a different location? Who knows for sure? I wasn't there on Operation High Jump. And yes, you can find a very, very polished and well-produced film that stars Admiral Byrd himself. And it was really filmed, apparently, conducting Operation High Jump. It's very interesting. You'll make of it what you will. And maybe they had a full film crew down there. And I got to say this, Admiral Byrd, I think he could have done a good acting career, too. I mean, the guy could really emote well. Now, one final observation here. You might remember the rum lines, or the loxodromes, the actual method of doing maritime navigation that was discovered by Portuguese mathematicians, how fitting from the exploration this last week. And oddly enough, these rum lines work on the sphere Earth, but then they also work on the flat Earth. Huh? The heck you say? How is that possible? Oh, the map of the Death Star. Yeah, good one there, Polly. Ooh, toroidal tessellation mapping from Rilo Ken. Yeah, wouldn't that make more sense? It just doesn't match up, though, on either one of those images that we have, do we? Ah, Fibonacci. Yes, the answer to investors and currency traders, right, KC933? Where's my Forex traders? Where's my Fibonacci? Need to get it going. Hey, Ptolemy, thanks for joining us. Well, don't worry. It's all recorded and you can go back and look at it. Ah, Sean P. Sacred geometry. Yes, as we would call it. The geometry that actually overcomes both shapes of the land. Huh, what are the odds? It works on both. Well, because that's how you explain why you have maps that are flat on charts for ships. It all makes perfect sense. Of course, who uses that stuff now? I mean, that's, Stone Age. We've got great digital maps now. We've got global positioning system. And of course, we have our good friend, artificial intelligence. It'll think for us. It'll do for us. Here's the old question here. Was this world map made 10 centuries ago? Well, I'm going to flat out say I don't know. But isn't this an interesting little indication? And oddly enough, it kind of matches the Terra Infinita map. And of course, the other map that showed other lands. So was it really made 10 centuries ago? Who the heck knows? Maybe it was made a lot longer ago. Maybe it was made 10 minutes ago. I don't know. But the ideas that it presents are very intriguing. The recurring theme of the circles, the concentric circles that work their way out. And when you go and you fiddle around or you meddle with the David Rumsey collection of maps, and that's where you can interface with the Urbano Monte map, and you can go back and look at charts of the old world and find that link, you'll see a lot of similarities. Is it a coincidence? Or is it really alluding to the fact that there is a lot more to this existence than we can even begin to imagine? Sissy May. If we find ourselves surrounded by a high wall, it's human nature to find out what's on the other side. Absolutely right. Ava's channel. I've seen the Southern Cross. Ooh. It is a beauty. The outer popcorn lands. Yeah, that's kind of what you see here, isn't it? Well, is it a realm? Is it something else? Maybe it's something even more than a physical existence. I don't know. Maybe realm is the most appropriate way to describe it. Greg, why does the moon appear larger at different times of the year? Well, is it really larger or does it appear larger? That's a good point. It's good observation. There's all kinds of anomalies that you can observe with the moon and the sun these days. And just talk to other people and see what they tell you. Hey, Queen Peachy Keen, good to see you. World maps 10 centuries old may show lands we've never discovered or we're not aware of. Oh yeah, just like the ones that we looked at that are 500 years old that show lands up in the North Polar region that we've been exploring for 500 years. But we don't know about these lands, right? The outer limits of my imagination burden me, the point I cannot see beyond. Ah. And maybe, just maybe, we'll keep on moving on. Yeah, if you can go out and take a look at the moon, I strongly suggest. It's definitely in an interesting appearance right now. Ah. Yeah, World War II aerial maps. Great example there, Ptolemy. Very good example. And then, of course, we have this other map attributed to the 1800s, Hot Springs, South Dakota. And, of course, this is attributed to the flat Earth belief. But it is an interesting depiction. Now, I want to caution everybody, though, on something here. One of the ideologies that seems to be a recurring theme, maybe I should put it that way, that we encounter is the fact that we are imprisoned in some way, shape, or form. Whether you want to think we're on a planet flying through space and we're imprisoned on it, whether you want to think that we're in a giant crater like this and we're imprisoned within the crater, or whether you want to think that it's an infinite plane and somehow we're imprisoned within it. One thing I can promise you, if you believe that you are imprisoned, you will be imprisoned. If you believe that you are stuck in a recursion loop, then you're probably going to be stuck in a recursion loop. In other words, repeating and doing the same thing over and over again. But if you actually have the belief and the capability to really embrace something that's far beyond what your mind might have within it, then you might have the ability within you to go to other places, to really go beyond in your mind. And maybe that's what existence is all about. Now, I'm not meaning to get metaphysical here. I know it's a little bit of a different turn for me. But I do know that there does seem to be a theme to keep us very downtrodden, to keep our energy levels very low, to keep us in a feeling of confinement. And the last thing I ever want any of you to feel is confinement. Have an open mind. Consider these different possibilities. It's totally okay to be unsure, and it's totally okay. In fact, it's preferable to say, I don't know. And I'm going to tell you, I don't know. That's why I don't push a theory or what shape the realm is. Because I really don't know. I haven't seen it from a perspective with my own eyes where I'm sure to say, with any sort of confidence, yes, I know that it's a giant triangle. Or yes, I know it's a tesseract. They're just theories. And that's all I'm going to present them as. And you're certainly welcome to share your views, share your beliefs at any point in time on this channel. That's the whole point behind it. As Brother Adam says, all I know is I don't know. And that's what a lot of it really is. You know, one of my favorite lines from a movie that I'm going to be showing here is, it takes wisdom to be the fool. So, anyways. And then, of course, it should be noted that Google Earth now shows us an actual planet, a sphere, even though it didn't originally. So they've upgraded it. Although it's not actually a sphere because, remember, it's limited to a two-dimensional screen. So, you know, I'm not trying to make any misrepresentations here. I'm just telling you the limitation is a two-dimensional screen. So just keep that in mind. And then, of course, the other looks beyond the ice wall. So are there other lands out there? Are there indications of other lands, or is it all just in our imagination? I guess we don't know. But we do know that the concept of there being other lands, whether you want to think of them as other continents that we access through portals, or traveling through secret passageways, or getting into a spaceship, or a starship as it were, and blasting off or warp driving to them, it's one of the strongest compulsions in the human mind. And oddly enough, you'll find plenty of people. Oh, look, Lemuria. You'll find plenty of people that want to really explore. That seems to be a natural human mentality. Curiosity. And with that, that is the end of the Unknown Lands. Thoughts on this exploration? Greetings, everyone, and welcome to the weekly live stream for the Restitutor Orbis channel. I'd like to extend a greeting to all Prime Explorers, viewers, and all others joining us. The moment you've been waiting for, Hotel Tartaria. Before we get started, though, I'd like you to think about what is your current view of a hotel? You've certainly stayed in hotels. Many of us have many times through our lives, and oftentimes, whether it's in the conduct of work or personal business or travel, we're in some sort of unique and very, very interesting hotel. But what do we really think of hotels these days? What do they really represent? And why is it that if we look at hotels in the past, we tend to see something just a little different? So I want you to keep that thought in your mind as we go through this exploration, because while we typically focus on government buildings, churches, mosques, other religious edifices, all other kinds of buildings of priority, we tend not to look at hotels. And yet hotels provide another one of those very essential clues that we have to understanding and being aware of the old world. You could also say it's some very definitive evidence. So keep that in mind as we go forward. And for the first part of our exploration, we're going to be zeroing in on Atlantic City. And this first image that you're looking at here is none other than the wondrous Atlantic City. Now, you might be surprised to know that Atlantic City in New Jersey, no, I can't do the accent at all. I'm obviously not from the East Coast. I'm sure you could figure that out. I might be from the UK, but that's okay. We don't need to talk about that now. But when you look in the details on many of these images from Atlantic City, you do see these very impressive edifices. You would think, if you aren't familiar with Atlantic City, that this is some sort of incredible government building. Maybe it's some sort of wondrous monument that was built to the wonders of Art Deco. You certainly wouldn't think it was a hotel if you didn't know anything about it. But what's rather odd about Atlantic City is the fact that it is a city that didn't really grow up until after the United States Civil War. Yes, on the Atlantic coast, we would expect this to be an early settlement from the 1700s or even earlier. But the official history tells us that this incredible resort didn't start development until the 1870s, when they go so far as to tell us that there were 500,000 people going there by rail every single year. It just always seemed to be so easy to travel and accomplish many other things in the past, especially in the 1800s, but we've already talked about that ad nauseum. When you look at some of these images, though, of course, you'll see this very intriguing composition, this amalgamation of very well-dressed people, and then these very impressively constructed structures. And yes, we'll be looking at some of these in very definitive detail. And you can see what Atlantic City has come to now. Yes, here we have one of our modern buildings. And you can see how it compares with what we had in the past. Of course, I could say it's taller, and it was constructed for a cheaper price, although that's not necessarily true either now, is it? But this is what we tend to have in Atlantic City now. And so again, compare and contrast this older view that we have at Atlantic City in New Jersey from the past to the modern view. Oh yes, isn't this lovely? And for those of you who are familiar with Las Vegas, the wondrous city that they built in the middle of the desert in Nevada, all the different ways there are to say it and mispronounce it and annoy people that are from there, although who's really from Nevada anymore? There are some nice people there, don't take me wrong, but it's just interesting to think of all the different pronunciations that we have. And here you have another one of these very impressive skyscrapers. So a very nondescript building. I mean, you could say, though, that the imagery is very impressive. It's like looking in a mirror. So make of it what you will. But this isn't Las Vegas. This is Atlantic City today. But you compare and contrast it with some of the older structures that we have. And oddly enough, this just being a resort town that didn't really come up until after 1875, we do find some rather puzzling structures. We have these castle sorts of structures that were also hotels, I suppose. Not exactly sure why we have that, but that seems to be what we do have. And here you have it, the Dennis Hotel, the Marlborough Blindheim Hotel that we'll be taking a close look at. Now, of course, this is the postcard, and you might be asking, well, it's just a postcard. Do you have something a little bit better than that? Yes, we do have something better than that. But this gives you an idea of some of the structures that were present in Atlantic City. Now, is the official historical account of Atlantic City accurate? Are parts of it accurate? Who really knows for sure? Welcome to come to separate conclusions on this. What interests me, though, is that we have all of these very impressive buildings in a very, very small proximity. And that's probably the first interesting detail that really stands out to us about Atlantic City. And yet you can see in this particular postcard here, we actually have two of our main hotels that we're going to be looking at. We won't be looking at the Dennis Hotel, but we will be looking at the Marlborough Blenheim Hotel. Marlborough, of course, being an interesting name with a lot of connotations to it. We won't talk about Winston Churchill at all, at least not in this exploration. And then we've got the Traymore Hotel over here. And the Traymore Hotel is the hotel that appeared on the thumbnail. Yes, a very impressive edifice. Multiple domes, multiple obelisks, all other sorts of details on here that you can't even begin to imagine would be in hotels nowadays. I mean, just take a look at your Hilton Garden Inn or any one of our other modern hotels and how we build them. Of course, they're all functional. I know. Even Four Seasons is built to be functional. But here you actually have a little bit of an image that shows you that these buildings were very real in Atlantic City. Now, what really to make of Atlantic City? Is it some sort of remaining settlement, or was it something that was designed to survive the reset, or for that matter, was it even a settlement that actually survived the reset unscathed? And therefore, people had to actually take the effort to repopulate it at some point in time. Not really sure, just suggesting other possibilities for it. And so that's why Atlantic City is very intriguing. And interestingly enough, both of these hotels that we're going to be looking at did survive into the 1970s. So we do have some colored photography. And again, the images that are not so questionable. So it does seem clear that these structures did in fact really exist. And the Marlborough, when we talk about it, yes, it was demolished in the late 1970s. And there is some very interesting dramatic footage of its demolishment. You can even find it still on various YouTube news feeds to this day. Fascinatingly. But you look at some of these other old images in Atlantic City, and wherever they're posing here, when you look in the details behind the images, you get the impression, though, of a lot of old world structures. Again, with that detail, and who knows what the exact construction material is on a lot of these. And looking at any image from Atlantic City from the early 1900s all the way through the 1930s, you'll get the same impressions of that. Now, why did they just suddenly decide to sink a lot of money in there? Are we really trying to shoot up the official historical narrative? I don't feel we need to devote time for that in Atlantic City. The whole fact that this settlement just developed in the 1870s and came up after that, I don't really feel that's worth our efforts because we've got some real doozies in this. And here you can actually see the images that give you the idea of just how impressive this architecture is. Now, even taking the, yeah, KC-933 looks flammable. That's a good one. And yes, but strangely enough, both of these buildings were constructed to be fireproof. No, not that film with Kirk Cameron, but actually fireproof. At least that's what they inform us. And oddly enough, we're actually looking at one of the largest, in fact, the largest reinforced concrete building in the world, because, you know, what else would it be? So moving on past these images, though, and looking at the colored images, it is very dramatic because you can see some interesting, I don't want to use this term wrong, but maybe I should say variance in the architecture. But then, oddly enough, there does seem to be some similarities. And what you'll find is that a lot of these structures were constructed in a similar amount of time. Now, here's something else that's very interesting with Atlantic City. This is the official city coat of arms. And again, this isn't exactly the things that we'd expect to see when we look at New Jersey now, is it? We do see some familiar symbols. Now, I'm not sure what to make of this. I mean, is this something that is a remnant from the distant past, or is this just something that was inspired by it and then was augmented or altered? See, that's the other challenge that we have, is that there's been a lot of renovation, a lot of reconstruction, a lot of remodeling. At least we forget urban renewal and the various incarnations of that. So how this image has changed, what it really represents, can't say for sure, but there are some very interesting depictions. I mean, look at this. Here we have the staff of power with wings on it, and then the snakeheads meeting. Now, of course, I'm not going to say what symbol we tend to associate that with today, because remember, symbols can have different meanings associated with them. But I certainly wouldn't expect these very intriguingly dressed individuals to represent New Jersey in any sort of way. What's even going on with the haircuts? I mean, they're certainly not doing the latest remake of Clash of the Titans with the next version of the Perseus haircut, since we had Harry Hamlin's big tuft of hair from the 80s, and then we had, what's that guy's name from the remake that I can't stand, who had it cut in a very military cut. But maybe this will be for the next remake. I can't really say for sure, though, about the city saying down here at the bottom. Was this something that was added later, or was this part of the original coat of arms? It's just one of those interesting little details to take a look at and ask some questions about. Sure, maybe the good people of Atlantic City decided to put together some very unique coat of arms that completely defies all expectations and standards of what we'd associate with the United States in the early 1900s or the late 1800s. I'm sure that's possible. I mean, we've got all sorts of images of people going around in robes and togas and fancy hairdos from that time frame, don't we? I mean, really, we don't, but we could just say it. But there were other hotels that were quite intriguing, and all we really have, in addition to limited photography, is some of the postcards that just give us an idea of just how grand and ornate a lot of these structures really were, and what they may have been representing. The hotel was there before New Jersey became a state. Probably right, Kathy. It's safe to say a lot of those structures were. But do we know for sure? We can say that we don't, but looking at some of the others, and here you can actually see this particular building, and this is the Claridge Hotel, and for the longest time, this was the tallest structure in Atlantic City, at least until the late 1970s, early 1980s. Good 4 decades. Quite impressive. And again, it has some of the attributes that we have come to associate with old world buildings. Now, has it been altered over the years? Has there been some changes with it? Yes, possibly. But it's still pretty impressive. Now, obviously, we can see down here towards the ground floors, yes, it's been modernized or renovated, or however you want to say it. But it is an example. Now, don't worry, I'm not here to depress you tonight. There is actually an example of a hotel that you can go to and visit in person to this day and interface with it and really have an authentic old world experience. No, it's not in Atlantic City, but we're going to be getting to it. So this is just giving us an idea of some of the beauties that we have there. Ah, yes. And here we have an example of our 1980s architecture in Atlantic City. Beautiful modernity. Same. But then compare and contrast that here with the old Atlantic City, the Hotel Windsor, an image attributed to 1911. And of course, we have our castle appearance. We have our smokestacks. But then in great disparity to what we see on the roads and the infrastructure capabilities at the time. I know. People just worked really hard. There were no labor laws, and there was infinite money available. It was the early 1900s. I've got it. We didn't have the Federal Reserve, which is the very definition of infinite money. But we don't need to go into that tonight. And here we have it, the Marlborough Blindheim Hotel. And we'll be looking at both the Marlborough and the Traymore in explicit detail. But the interesting detail about this particular hotel, and we'll look very, very closely. Let's just go ahead and dive in. What do we have here? Now, this was constructed in 1906 and torn down in the late 1970s. But what do these symbols really mean? And when you even try to look up what architectural style this is, you'll get the usual, well, it's, and I'll say the hand wave answer. It's Spanish and it's Moorish, so which is which? I don't know. They kind of blend together. But you look carefully at the details on this, and since when did we associate interesting dragons and serpents? Now, this isn't exactly the best image. I've got a better image where you can see some of the details a little bit better. But it is very dramatic to actually see the structure in its original coloring, because that's what we tend to lose when we look at the black and white photos. And what other details do we have in it? Have we seen some of these symbols before that we have on this structure? What do they really represent? What's with these 2 impressive obelisks anyway in this dome? And what are your thoughts just looking at this? Yes. Founded. No doubt about it. Yeah, I'm with you, Lori. I wish we could see all these in person too, because, there's a lot that we've missed out on. But like I've said, I'm saving the best for last because it does still exist and we can still see the best for last. No, it's not in Atlantic City, but yeah, as Nana says, it's a castle. I mean, how do you really define this? How do you explain something like this being in Atlantic City, a resort town that was purpose-built as a hotel? This doesn't make any sense. I mean, while those buildings might not have been so aesthetically pleasing from the 1980s, it at least makes sense, especially from the capitalist mentality, to build a structure like this. How exactly does one attribute this kind of building to any kind of economic system? Really, I could argue this building doesn't make any sense in a capitalist system any more than it makes any sense in a communist system and everything else in between and everything beyond it. Any form of currency can't really explain this. I mean, we say we can. We've got the money, we can do anything. We've got the money now to do anything. Lack of money never stopped a war. But then you look and see what we have today. Ah, yes, the Ocean Casino Resort. And this does make sense from that perspective. Of course, we're just trying to maximize occupancy. And we make the structure appear aesthetic by having it blend into the sky. Well, that makes sense. It's just a giant mirror. Hope you don't park your car somewhere where that mirror fries your car, like we saw in that one building a couple explorations ago. But then we also have some other legitimate old world structures that have been repurposed or have been altered over time. And that's where the account tends to be obfuscated. So it's almost as though if there were structures that could be renovated to where we should say that the old world signs could very, very carefully be muted over time, I'll use that word because that's probably the best word to use, then they were allowed to survive. But the structures that they couldn't do that on, such as the Hotel Traymore here, well, it wasn't getting past the 1970s. Because how exactly do you explain a structure like this from 1906, when it was originally constructed, and trying to pass that off to the people today? Yes, we could build a hotel like this in 1906, but, we can't build a hotel like this now. It's just not economically prudent, or whatever other list of reasons that we have now. So what do you really make of it, though, when you see a structure like this? And this is probably one of the most dramatic structures that was in Atlantic City, although, a good argument could be made that Marlboro Blindheim, being the largest reinforced concrete building in the world when it was constructed, maybe it's just as dramatic, if not more dramatic. But, it comes down to actually trying to decide which one is more aesthetically pleasing. And sometimes it's not really that easy, is it? Yeah, Heidi says it really well. Unexplainable. Unexplainable from both a mainstream historical perspective and an alternate historical perspective. Yes, I'm going to admit it. And Robert says it very well. Magnificent. And then Vaughn says, Vaughn. We can't even build them when we try to these days. No, and nobody's even trying to, really. I mean, there are some efforts to try to replicate this architecture in place, and we'll probably do an exploration on those efforts. And I will admit some are a little more successful than others. But when you've done this long enough and you actually look at these things, it becomes very, very easy to determine the difference. And so, let us begin by taking a closer look at the Hotel Traymore. But let me make sure I don't have any more images from Atlantic City. Yes, we do have some others. The Chalfonte Hotel. And here you can sort of see something that looks to be a little bit in between. So could this have been a structure from a different time in the previous civilization? Could this have been a reset purpose-built structure? Who knows for sure? I mean, it's hard to tell. And then looking at the original imagery of the Marlboro Blindheim Hotel. All right, I'm getting impatient. Let's just dive right on into it because this is too good not to see. And I know you want to see the interiors of these. And guess what? I'm like a little kid in the candy store right now. So we'll start by looking at the Traymore. And yes, I was able to locate some good interior images, so you will not be disappointed. So, the Traymore Hotel, constructed in 1906 and torn down in 1972. And let me make sure that you've got a good view of this. Let's get a little closer. Now, we don't have maybe I should say it this way. We don't have the same fidelity in the detail of the image that we'd like, but even at a distance, you can get an idea for the opulence of this very impressive structure. You can see details from this distance. Now, I'm not exactly sure how far away this image was when it was taken, but we get an idea for the mass of this structure. And yet, despite this being built in 1906, we can see some architectural detailings on it, and they don't even really give you an architectural style when you look up the history of this building. Nobody even bothers. I mean, why would they? Because it kind of looks a little like what they would attribute to Art Deco later. I'm not saying that's what it is, and that's not what they tell us it is. It just kind of looks like that to me, to my objective eyes. I mean, we've got these two very impressive domes up top. We've got this other subsidiary dome over here, and then you've got what looks to be a giant smokestack. Now, what was the original purpose behind this building? I don't know. Was this some sort of unique reset structure? Hard to say. Yeah, as Carol says right there, not enough people to even use it. And, when you actually look at the occupancy, how many rooms they had in these structures, does that make any sense? So that's why I'm a little torn on the speculation in terms of what its original purpose was. Was it some sort of reset compound, a purpose-built structure that was able to survive difficult times? Or was it actually a structure that was from the high period of the previous civilization? Both are very distinct possibilities. But you look at some of the other images with it, and you can see the image from it, and right next to it you had the Marlborough Blindheim Hotel, and yet it wasn't quite as large. Now let's go to the interiors. And keep in mind that a lot of these images were snapped from the 1920s to 1940s. I don't know for sure. And there's also accounts that there was a fire in these structures, that they were renovated over periods of time. So are we looking at the structure in its original grandeur? Hard to say. But when we look closely, we can see there is some detailing here on these columns and these pillars. And then we can again see that we have the very impressive elevators. But this is just our first interior look. And yet, looking at some of the other patios, you can see that there seemed to be a lot more available to this. Now, what was the actual construction material? It's really, really hard to say. And yeah, the real tragedy is we can't analyze it because this building's no longer with us. It was torn down. And why was it torn down? Very, very good question. Now, here you can actually see it in all its glory with the other structures. And very, very impressive in Atlantic City. I mean, all of these structures just seem to defy what we'd expect to see in the 1900s, before the Great Depression, before there were no jobs available because the economy wasn't growing, but there were structures that were still being built. This is an interesting one over here. Almost see some little columns there. But again, you can see that the Traymore is by far and away what appears to be the largest overall structure. Now, granted, that may just be to the naked eye. The other interesting thing is when you look and you see that it appears to be a brick structure closer to it. But here's the problem, and I'll acknowledge this to everybody. No, I can't even attribute these images actually being in or along the Traymore Hotel. It's been gone for a long time, well over 50 years. So even believing that the structure existed, and hold on a second, let me reference for you the films that you can see the structure in its full glory before it was torn down. You can actually see the Traymore Hotel in the film The King of Marvin Gardens. It was shot in Atlantic City. And I think that was a Jack Nicholson piece, if memory serves. Yeah, Jack Nicholson, Bruce Dern, Ellen Burstyn. Wow, that's going back in the day. Scatman Crothers, 1972. So The King of Marvin Gardens, if you really want to see the Traymore and actually see what it looks like in a film and some other images of it when it was still in existence, watch The King of Marvin Gardens. Because films inadvertently do capture some details from these structures. Now look at this. And looking at this patio, this eating area, you kind of get an idea of some of the opulence with this. And again, you see some of the unique brick arrangements or block arrangements. I mean, who knows if this was originally brick or not. But just so interesting that all this trouble, all these resources to build these impressive hotels, and they didn't even designate them historical areas. They just tore them down as fast as they could. Yeah, absolutely. Very beautiful. And good call out there, Opie. No patrons whatsoever. Megyn Kelly went there. What, Atlantic City? Yeah, I think I recall that. But then even here at this desk, and you can get an idea of some of the detailing here and some of the beauty within the interior architecture. I mean, look at some of these devices here on the pillars. And even look at this old light set here. I mean, if that is what it was, an original light set, I mean, is the light coming from the base there? Very intriguing. Very unique design and a lot of effort that went into it. And of course, I don't want to ignore the floor. What was the floor made out of? Something that we'd think of as granite, marble, or something even more. It's just interesting to look at this. And then you also look at the main reception area, and very odd. These are almost like giant torches almost. I mean, giant fire pits. Very unique. And again, I have to question what exactly is missing, because it feels like, now I don't know for sure. This is just my intuition here. But we get the impression that there's a lot that's missing even from these images. It almost seems like a lot of decorations were removed. And if you recall some of those explorations we've done, namely the state capitals, I'll just highlight, the Iowa State Capitol, where we saw devices that were removed from banisters, from walls. You get the same impression with this hotel. I mean, look at this floor. You can get the idea that there was a lot more decorative detailing in it, and some of it is still there. but the feeling is that a lot of it's been removed. I mean, what was actually on these columns, these pillars, whatever you want to call them? Very, very interesting. And what about the ceiling? And then, of course, you see other images like this, and here you do see some more of the detailing is still present. So it's as though there were different stages, as though the building was slowly eroded over time, or muted, so they could gradually take away the opulence and then give the usual series of reasons. So, and thank you for that, Robert, and welcome to the new members, and thank you for joining us. But that's what's really intriguing to me, because I think you see this with the Hotel Traymore here from 1906 to 1972, where this building was slowly muted. RB, how many people did they need to clean and staff that kind of place? Great question. Probably as many people as it takes to clean and staff an aircraft carrier, a couple thousand, maybe more. How many could they actually fit in there? That's another good question. Good point, RB, and good to see you tonight. Now, I like this image because here you get an idea that the structure is much, much older than we could begin to imagine. Now, yeah, I know it's not exactly the best colored photograph, and, there's strange things going on in the lighting, but you can almost see some strange erosion, some marks of degradation. Now, the structure didn't even last to be 70 years old. They tore it down before it was even 70 years old. Very, very odd. And yet the unique architecture here by each of these domes. I mean, there's something that's almost just decorative beyond our ability and magnificent, almost in a way that matches the Hagia Sophia, I dare say. I mean, I'm really struggling to find any kind of comparison because this hotel is so unique. Indeed, that being what it was. And then here in this little bar room, again, you have that same impression that there were a lot of things that were removed, or that it was just sort of muted to make it a little bit more plain. But we can still see some of the geometry and the geometrical precision on the interior of the structure. It's just a hotel. Why do you need to bother with this? This is one of those things that just doesn't add up. And then even in some of these reception rooms, you can still see some of the remnants when you look in the detail. You have to look closely, but it's still there. So it's as though they didn't get around to removing all of the decoration, just a lot of it, to mute it a little bit over time. And that seems to be the tragedy for a lot of these structures. Now, here's the other issue that we have. Because we have limited images available, don't even get me started on the lack of availability of construction images, and even if we had them, no reason to even go there. But what are we not seeing from this hotel? What's truly been lost to time? What incredible interfaces do we have? What does it really look like underneath these domes that we can't see? What's it look like on the interior? Or if you're standing up here near, is this a smokestack? Is this something else? Everything about the structure is very, very unique, and it just really stands out. And I'd like to thank Paul for sending this to me. Paul, if you're listening, I do really appreciate it, because I'd intended to get to Atlantic City not so soon after Coney Island, and yet the story behind Atlantic City is very similar to Coney Island. It's really, really strange. So that's the Hotel Traymore. What are your thoughts on that one? Yeah, Carol says it right here. Remove the decorations and remove the healing properties of the building. No doubt about it. You remove the aesthetic, and what about the acoustic properties of the building? That's the other thing that gets really, really odd about it. Hey, there you are, Paul. Yeah, I appreciate it. And thank you again for sending this image and recommending it. I'd completely forgotten about this. So thank you for saving my work on it. I do appreciate it. Yeah, and as Kathy says right here, attention to detail. And that's what you get in a lot of these structures. So anyway, that's the Hotel Traymore. And by all means, do some research. Maybe there are still some images out there. Now, of course, we have to subject them to scrutiny, because now that we're looking for images, suddenly images become available. Are they authentic or are they not? I'm not sure. As RB says, I wish my hotel was that nice. You and me both, RB. Yeah, and I usually shoot for Hilton Garden Inn. And while it's nice, it's certainly nothing quite like this. But, that's just me. And no, that's not a plug for Hilton Garden Inn, just because I know that I can count on their breakfast. Okay, so let's move on to the Marlborough Blindheim Hotel. Now, as I recall, I know pretty certain John Levi had covered this one before in one of his explorations quite a while back. So, the Marlborough Blindheim, let me make sure you can see that. All right, we're good on the imagery. And by the way, as we go on through the exploration, please be sure you hit that like button and support the channel. And let's deep dive into the Marlborough Blindheim. Now, oddly enough, this was also constructed in 1906. So, two impressive, visually unique hotels that were constructed in the same year. Now, they even have the temerity to say, or maybe I should say audacity, that it was constructed, topped out in 1906, and then opened in 1906. And then this one was torn down in 1978. Now, what we do have that we didn't have with a colorized image is some of the decorations on the wings. We'll get to that in a second. What I want to focus on, though, is in this image, you can actually see this very unique motif of serpents, dragons. What exactly is this? I mean, here you can clearly see it's a dragon. Very, very interesting symbolism on this structure. Yeah, exactly. Looks like it's missing a few minarets. And maybe, but you know what we tend not to see on minarets or with that Spanish Moorish architecture are dragons, serpent creatures, or whatever you want to call these. So very, very hard to know exactly what to make out of it. And that's why I wanted to spend a little time looking at some of this detail. Because you look over here, and again, you see some of these serpent dragon motifs on this. And what exactly are these domes? But then again, is this that pine cone device? Yet there seems to be faces on it. So very, very strange. Why do you need all this on a hotel? I don't know. Looking at one of the obelisks or pylons or whatever you want to call it. And oddly enough, it looks like some sort of crab, but you know, it could be something else. And yet a very unique symbol right above it. What exactly does that represent? I mean, none of these symbols represent anything that we associate with the United States or New Jersey in the early 1900s. None of them at all. Now, if you want to argue that point, be my guest. You know, I'm always open to arguments. And yet looking at the dome here, it looks like we've got these faces, these heads. Are these the lion heads? I can't quite tell. Maybe. That are up top here. But they all have such a unique appearance to them. And yet this looks similar to that flower device that we've seen in other locations. I mean, or sunburst or whatever you want to call it. I mean, these symbols, I can't even describe them because I've got no frame of comparison on a lot of them. And usually we do have a frame of comparison, or we've seen them before. And so when you see these kind of details, then suddenly it makes a lot more sense why they had to demolish this hotel. There is no explaining this. Yeah, we've got this hotel, and we've got some really unique crabs and symbols we can't explain. And oh, by the way, don't pay any attention to the nasty faces or the dragons or the serpents all over the place. Yeah, not exactly sure what that's all about. And so that's on the main structure itself. I mean, there you can see it. Dragons, interlaced dragons. So was this some sort of warning? Was this from the time when things were falling apart? Was this a reset structure? Well, looking over here, you've got other interesting symbols. And again, we see this bountiful harvest, maybe. But how gorgeous and intricate with some of the other decorations on this. I mean, whatever this represents, whatever it really means, just the fact that this was done, whoever did this, whenever this was done, it's very, very impressive. And why wouldn't you go to all efforts to preserve this? Well, the historical account says, because money was low, the place was falling apart in the 70s, and nobody wanted to put the effort into it anymore. It's just easier to build one of those big high-rise hotels, and you'd make a bigger return on it. Well, I guess that makes the sense from the capitalist perspective. But you can see that this shell device is actually on all four sides of the structure, or whatever you want to call it. Shell, shield, acoustic device. I mean, I really don't know. I'm spitballing ideas here, because this is just one of those structures that just completely defies anything. What do we got here? Is the crab building aligned with the Cancer constellation? That's a great question there, Intuitive Solution. I don't know. I'll have to look it up on the map and see if it indeed was. Might be something to that with the celestial alignments. So, Grand Society, yeah. Well, hey, it did survive the Grand Society of the 1960s. It just didn't survive the post-Grand Society of the 1970s. So, unfortunate. Anyway, so here's that colored image, and you'll notice that we don't really see the wings too well on this, but here you can get an idea. You can kind of see the dragons and the serpents, and I do appreciate the colored image because it gives you an idea of what the building really looks like in its full coloring. And that tends to be what we lose when we look at the structures in black and white photography. Of course, you know, there's that argument. How long have we really had colored photography? How much did photography advance? Who really knows for sure? I mean, you got lots of people who think they know, and maybe they do. But what I find impressive on this is just how intricate some of this symbolism here is on these pylons or these obelisks. I mean, was this originally gold? Is this something that really, really shined? You know, and you see these nasty little faces. Were these originally in gold or something even beyond gold? Now, this image is attributed to the early 1960s, 1962 from the archive. Again, I don't know for sure, but just very, very impressive. And we're just looking at the exterior of this very unique hotel. But then on the interior, it looks like we do have some devices that have survived. Now, again, I wasn't there. I wasn't in the hotel before they tore it down. I didn't take these pictures myself. I don't know. But we have seen these images before from the Plumber Building in Rochester, and that structure is still standing. And, you know, if you can talk to the right people, you might be able to get inside of it. So very, very interesting that there are these devices that are on the inside. But again, much like with the Hotel Traymore here in the Blindheim Marlborough, you can see it's kind of the same thing. You've got some signs of the decorative detailing, but yet this image seems to either wash it out or they've been removed. Not really sure. And I think that's really the tragedy behind it. Yeah, as Carol says, decorations are from the new owners of the building. Yeah, I think a lot of the new decorations may be, but I think we do have some decorations that are older that were either pulled out or, how shall we say, modified. So, hard to say. Yeah, Heidi, and I think that's more than a coincidence because you're talking a structure that's in Atlantic City that was built in the very early 1900s, again, according to the official historical account, and then a structure in Rochester, Minnesota, the Mayo Clinic, that was built to be its main building sometime in the 1920s, although conflicting reports on that one as well. Let's take a look at some more that we have here in the Marlborough Blindheim. Now here in the ceiling, you can get an idea that some of the decorative details have survived for the time being. And again, asking that question, how exactly do you reconcile going to all this effort in what appears to just be a sunning room, you know, just a nice little room where you sit and you look at the beach and the ocean. You have all this decoration. Why would anybody bother? I'm looking out the windows. Why would you bother, A, planning this, B, putting all the effort into constructing it, and then C, investing the capital in it when people are supposed to be looking at the windows and seeing the pretty ocean and the beach? Don't you find that just a little odd? Now, of course, then the question begs, okay, well, Mr. Smarty Pants, if someone did design this and build it like this, then why did they put these decorations in it? Was there some sort of function behind the artistic form of the decorations? And as we've theorized before, yes, it seems clear that there was. Was it acoustic? Was it part of the healing properties? And then when you look closer, you can see again that we've got decorated columns here. So not only do we have a very well decorated ceiling in this structure, that this image is not doing it justice, because I really wonder what this looked like in full color, we also have columns with decorations on them because, you know, why not? You're going to invest in a nice ceiling, you may as well have nice columns too. I'm surprised we don't have lines and sculptures and all kinds of stuff all across the floor too. Who knows, maybe there were. But, you know, I'm being a little facetious. But it gets to a point where you just see enough of this and you're just kind of losing your mind because you really can't explain it or justify it. So, now this is an image from when they were tearing it down. And remember, they were tearing it down in the late 70s, but for some reason, you know, colored images are difficult to come by. I'm not sure why. But quite a tragedy. How difficult was it for them to tear this down? Hard to say. And yet some of the other interior images, I mean, here we can see that they were really pulling apart the building from the inside out. Now, was there a fire? Were there other issues for renovation? Not really sure, but in some of the images you can see there are some details that survive. You just have to look carefully and take a moment. You know, right here. What the heck is this? Well, clearly it's some kind of light system. I think I see light bulbs here, but was it something else originally? And what was actually going on here in this, what appears to be a ballroom of some sort? At least that's what we'd think of it as. And you can still see some of the decorations here on top of the pillars, but what was supposed to go in each of these circular areas here? Were they supposed to be windows? What was actually here in the middle of this open area and this circle in the middle? I don't know. Very, very odd. But then you see the music gallery here, and you've got what appears to be some sort of advanced form of technology. I mean, how else do you describe this? And so here in this image, it seems as though the technology the architecture and the detailing of the decorations were preserved in their full glory. So very interesting that it compares and contrasts with what we looked at earlier. Oh yeah. Hey, Creator's Life, thanks for joining us and welcome. Yeah, there you go. Electric current control. I mean, who knows exactly what that technology is for? Is it something acoustic? Is it cymatic? Is it all the above? Is it more? Is it some sort of means of interfacing with the energy levels of people? You know, who knows? What you got there, Griff? Yeah, I mean, it does look like it'd be in a sci-fi movie, you know? Maybe Ridley Scott should have scoped this building out for Blade Runner, but, you know, it didn't survive when they started filming the original Blade Runner. And yet here in this other image, you can see that they did have something. We can't really make it out, though, because it's not the best image in that ballroom. What was actually in those circular areas, those impressions that go around the ceiling. So it's very, very odd. It's very peculiar that they're images that say different things. Marlborough Blenheim above illustration shows but one section of this magnificent and sumptuously fitted house. Oh, they call it a house. That is what they call it, yeah. Great adjective there, by the way. The open-air plaza and enclosed solariums overlook the boardwalk. See, that's what we need in our hotels. We need more solariums. If we had more solariums, we'd actually be out there looking at things and we'd be talking to each other. Yeah, just a thought. The boardwalk and the ocean, the environment, convenience, and comforts of the Marlborough Blenheim and the invigorating climate at Atlantic City make this the ideal place for winter and spring. And so, yes, once you have the trains taking everybody out there, I even like how they capture some of the detail on what's clearly the sketch here. Make sure you get the dragons on there. They need to see that there's dragons on the obelisks, the pylons. You know, the dragons are what finally sell it. But then you see images like this, and yet this is purported to be from the Marlborough Blenheim Hotel. And again, you can see some of the decorations. It's almost as though the photos have, I don't know. I mean, I'm not going to suggest that the photos were altered in some way. I mean, I don't have to suggest that. But for whatever reason, it almost feels as though they're intentionally of a poor quality, so you really can't get the detail that was actually in this building. You can get an idea of it. But you can't really appreciate how extensive it really was and how far it went. So, what you got there, Sean? New Jersey also did with the Prudential building. Oh, yeah. I mean, it's happened with no shortage of structures. It's just interesting to see in what we think of as hotels this happening. You know, all this effort going into these hotels. And here in this final image, you can see its unfortunate demolition when that time finally came. And yet, for whatever reason, there seems to be something different about the images when the demolition occurred. You know, now did they scrape the paint off? Did something change? Was there some sort of treatment that they did to the building to actually demolish it? Why, in fact, was this building demolished? When we look at our theories, you know, because we always had that theory. They demolish any old world building that could be demolished if the capability's there. Unless demolishing that building would affect something else that somebody doesn't want affected. But that apparently didn't seem to apply one way or the other to the Marlborough, and so down it went. And it's a great tragedy. And all we have left of the images, look at that radiator there, all we have left of the images, which give us the bare bones hint of what this structure really was in its glory. And again, we get the feeling that a lot's been removed. But yet there are some other images, and if you look hard, you can find them, and they're not easy to find. Portion of the concert exchange in the Marlborough. You can get an idea for just how beautiful and decorated and ornate the structure was during its glory. Now, the official historical account will compensate for this by telling us there were fires, it fell into disrepair, it had been around for a whole 50 years and was just starting to fall apart. You know, just like they tell us at the Iowa State Capitol, the cornerstone was so schlocky they had to replace it in about 3 years. And then they had to replace that cornerstone too. But none of it really adds up, though, when you actually look at images like this and you see something completely different than what we saw in all those other images. You see something that shows you how incredibly amazing and what kind of sense of beauty and grandeur this building had in its true heyday. Yeah, right there. Truth amongst the deception. It is a historical document. The structure surviving is a historical document. And like I said, believe it or not, there is one of these hotels that is fully preserved. And we're going to get to it, so make sure you watch to the end on this one. So anyway, that takes us through Atlantic City. we're now going to transition to take a look at the old Waldorf Astoria in New York City. Now, there is a current Waldorf Astoria in New York City, but we're not looking at that one. Now, if you viewed the channel for a little while or over a couple months, you'd be familiar to know, or you would realize, that the Waldorf Astoria is the current location of the Empire State Building. And voila. And so another structure, the original Waldorf Astoria, built 1893. It was actually two separate hotels, amalgamated into one, and then torn down in 1929. Wait a minute, was it the Empire State Building or was it the Chrysler Building? Drawing a blank on that one. Well, in any event, they tore it down, but yeah, the name of itself, Astoria, so this is what it looked like. Pretty sure it was for the Empire State Building. I don't think it was for the Chrysler Building, but either way, they tore it down for a skyscraper, and you can see how impressive it was. Here's the interior. Ah, yes, just the kind of dining experience that we used to have. Look at this. So, a structure that was only there for a couple decades, and they had this kind of beautiful detail on the inside of it, but they tore it down. They tore it down. Makes perfect sense, doesn't it? Now, keep in mind, we're not too far from Atlantic City here, but, you know, we're in New York City where anything's possible and anything can happen at any time, especially if we go off the official historical account. But let's take a look at some more of these images from this beauty. Now, this was the Waldorf, so keep in mind this was a separate hotel. I'm not even going to talk about the problems with this image, but yeah, apparently it existed on its own. Very unique, very incredible. Lots of little detailing here up on the roof where it's the hardest thing to do. But hey, it was the 1800s. It was easy to do then. But again, on some of these inside images, this is the Astor Gallery. Was Mrs. Astor safe in the Astor Gallery? Of course she was. Yeah, it's a joke from the Titanic, a bad joke. But then we see some of these familiar symbols on the inside here. Wonder what was pulled off of the ceiling, because the ceiling's awfully plain, but then they put all this effort into decorating everything from the walls. And then we have our favorite cartouche device appearing again in many different variations. So really we can see why this structure had to come down. I mean, what's going on over here? Hard to say. Boy, this would just be something incredible to walk through today. You know, and you might recall the explorations we did in Moscow and looking at the palace there and the Kremlin. I mean, this is really something that compares to the palaces that we see in Europe, but this isn't there anymore. We tore it down to build a modern skyscraper, or did we? Who knows for sure. Here's the Astoria main ballroom. Yeah, some of those details there, because how can you have a ballroom unless you fully decorate all the balconies? Because, you know, it's just the kind of stuff that you need, especially for a hotel that's only going to be there for a couple decades. Oh, look, another version of that cartouche. Everywhere you look, it's all over the place. But then looking at like the main foyer here. Oh yeah, that's something else we need in hotels again. We need our main foyers back. Just a big sitting area, but you have these gigantic columns. Again, all very well decorated. And you've got all this effort that went into this very elaborate and detailed ceiling. So once again, I know it doesn't make sense from either the capitalist, socialist, or any other economic perspective why anybody would do this. Nice light fixtures too. Again, it's as though there were no limitation on the capabilities at the time. Even looking at the floor. Now, this is the main office. Oh, yeah, well, you need to have a very well-decorated main office. So your employees, who, as we understand it, were overworked, and, you know, everyone who built it was overworked, yet they put this kind of effort into this decorative detailing. Well, of course, it's because everybody was rich in the 1800s, especially everybody going to New York City. They just had so much money they didn't know what to do with it. I mean, look at this guy with his little mustache here. Yeah, and who knows what the actual construction materials of this building really were. But you look at some of the interiors and you get the idea of, again, what was lost over time. I mean, 1929, right before the Great Depression. And then, of course, they threw up the Chrysler Building and then the Empire State Building because it was just that easy. You know, here you can see in this gigantic banquet, and yet looking in the back, you can see some of the decorative detailings. And yet it's covered over here. Very, very odd. Well, you know, we had to decorate it. We had to put additional branches and leaves so people felt like they were in the outdoors, especially when they're dressed to the nines like they are here. Wonder how comfortable it was to actually sit there and endure a meal like this. I don't know. But then here in the Gentleman's Cafe in the Waldorf, I mean, Look at this. In the ceiling, all this intricate detail. And what exactly is this symbol about back here? I mean, this is nothing that we'd associate with the United States and New York City in the 1870s, 1880s. I mean, if you want to get an idea of what mainstream history tells us, go back and watch that film, The Age of Innocence, with Daniel Day-Lewis. And believe me, it's always a pleasure to watch Daniel Day-Lewis. But watch that film and see how people were living in that time. And then try to reconcile with what mainstream history tells us through that film, those people constructing something like this, with all these decorations, all these incredible columns. I mean, it just completely blows the mind. Oh, there you go, Albie. Yeah, eyes wide shut. I get the feeling if this structure survived, and they would have filmed in the Waldorf Astoria as well. Why not? But remember, this is all just hotels. And I don't care if these are hotels for wealthy people. What, wealthy people just like to look at columns and beautiful decorations and not talk to each other about all their business plans? That's how you get wealthy, by not caring about money and just appreciating art all the time? Now, that is what they tell us, though, that wealthy people from this time frame all had great art collections, and that's what this was going towards. Okay, well, whoever owned this hotel, wouldn't you want to save this incredible fireplace? I mean, this would be a work of art that would endure to this day. No, it was just made out of some kind of cheap staff and stucco. Yeah, sure it was. I don't believe that for a second. And even when you look at some of the drawing rooms, and they call this the Henry IV drawing room, not sure why. And again, no detail spared. All the effort into building out all of these structures. So anywhere you stayed, the Myrtle Room, I guess this was one of the hotel rooms. Oh, there's their cartouche device. A couple different variations of it. Interesting. I mean, are these vents of some sort, or are these just decorations as well? Very, very intriguing. I mean, just the detail on this and the very subtle nuances of this particular room. You can't really justify this. And no one's building a hotel room like this today. Not even the world's first trillionaire is bothering building hotels like this today. Why would he? I mean, who could do it, for starters? And again, it wouldn't be economically viable. You remember that guy from the film Falling Down? It's not economically viable. Here's the reading room. This is why we don't have people who like to read these days. We don't have nice reading rooms. So in our modern hotels, we need to restore our reading rooms. Or heck, if this is the room that you're going to go to and listen to your iPod. You hear what I just did there? Yeah. Antiquated device. Excuse me. You got your iPhone or your laptop. Imagine sitting in a room like this. Imagine sitting in a room like this and actually listening to this live stream. Wouldn't that be something? You got the very well decorated balcony up here. I mean, really, this is just a hotel in New York City. How does this make any sense? I mean, do you not want people to ever leave the hotel? I would never want to leave the hotel. Oh, Vaughn. Looks like a grid. Yeah, it does look like a grid, doesn't it? The grid. Yeah, less said about that, the better right now. But time is a dimension. Yeah, that's a good way to say it, Sky Sage. Wonderful as always. Oh, yeah, there you go, Sean. Don't let me forget that. Multiple basement levels, yes. A lot of different dimensions to these structures. And here we've got this very, very interesting sketch, the two separate hotels before they were joined as one, the Waldorf and the Astoria. Yeah, okay. Were they actually joined in our time frame? Not really sure. But here we actually have the U.S. Senate committee hearing on the Titanic sinking. Correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't the Titanic a British flagged ship? Wasn't it? Wasn't the White Star Line a British line? Why is the U.S. Senate having a hearing on it? Oh, because of John Jacob Astor. That probably had something to do with it. But hey, Mrs. Astor was safe. In fact, I'm sure this guy right here is the one that said that. Mrs. Astor is safe. And then everybody settled down. Well, look, this guy seems to be smiling. He's having a grand old time. The Titanic went down. I told those fools there's no such thing as an unsinkable ship. Well, what's really going on here? I mean, that's what this image is attributed to. I don't wonder if it's a mistake, maybe. Not that historians ever make intentional mistakes, but it can happen. It's really, really odd. But yeah, in the archive, that's what this image is attributed to. From the hotel, the U.S. Senate committee hearing on the Titanic sinking. Why are they doing that in the Waldorf Astoria? Oh, because it was John Jacob Astor. Silly me. Okay, I'll stop. But then, again, looking at the restaurant. And yeah, I mean, just imagine eating in a restaurant like this. Just impressive and amazing. And here the street view image of it once the hotels were joined into one. And again, you can see some of the decorations on the outside of it. So it wasn't enough that they made the inside so impressive and opulent, they had to do it on the outside as well. Look, when you go into this place, you know you're going in a palace. I would argue that once again, this is something else that rivals any of the great palaces that still stand in Europe to this day. But, this is the United States. We tore it down for whatever reason. Yeah, it's very, very intriguing. Well, we know the reason. They tell us it was so they could build an impressive skyscraper. But you look at some of these other structures and some of these other images, and it's very, very peculiar, especially with the coloring on it. I mean, what's exactly going on with this bank right here? Again, all this odd symbolism. Now, is this a bank? I don't even know. I think it's a bank. Maybe not. Maybe it's something else. It's just what we typically associate with a bank. But very, very odd. I mean, these images that really show us that there seems to be a completely different world than we'd expect to see in our mainstream historical account. So, thoughts on that one so far? Yeah, there you go, Heidi. She says it very, very directly. They were getting rid of evidence. And that seems to be exactly what they were doing. Getting rid of evidence, and that was that.